Hey everybody, and Tony here with the review of Modest Mussorgsky's Sorochintsy Fair, live from the Komische Oper Berlin, which I saw on the opera platform. The conductor was Henryk Nanasi, the production was done by Barry Kosky, the sets and costumes were done by Katrin Leatag, the dramaturgy was handled by Ulrich Lenz, the lights were handled by Diego Litz, and the chorus master was David Cavelios. I mainly knew about Modest Mussorgsky as a composer through his two most famous works of all time, the politically epic dramas of Boris Godunov and Kovanchina. I also knew him mostly as a composer for all of these grand epic dramas and not really as a composer for a comic opera because Sorochintsy Fair isn't really as widely performed as Boris Godunov and Kovanchina combined. That is until I watched this entire opera that I was able to really appreciate the music and some of the tunes, most notably the hopak, which is a very well-known traditional Cossack dance, and of course the solo numbers of Kivria and Parasya. The basic story goes like this. It all takes place, well, in the Sorochintsy Fair itself, and we see a peasant by the name of Solopi Cherevic, his wife Kivria, and their daughter Parasya just traversing along the fair trying out a lot of different things. That is until a gypsy appears and states that a devil is looking for his red jacket which he lost at that very fair. Meanwhile, Parasya and a young lad by the name of Gritsko are basically flirting with each other. That is until Cherevic appears and chides Gritsko for his indecent behavior towards his own daughter. Gritsko states that he is the son of one of Cherevic's really good friends, and Cherevic basically states that Parasya and Gritsko are to be married the next day. However, Kivria is totally against this, even though she herself also has a little bit of a fling with the pastor's son, Afanasi. This leaves both Gritsko and Parasya very downhearted. The gypsy reappears and tells Gritsko that he has a proposition for him. If Gritsko will give the gypsy his oxen in exchange for 15 rubles, he will be able to convince Cherevic that he is worthy of Parasya's hand. One of Cherevic's drinking buddies, Kum, also states that the devil who is looking for his red jacket has the face of a pig every time he appears on the moral world. This leads the townsfolk to flee away in superstitious horror, and we even have a dream sequence in which Gritsko encounters Chernobog, the Russian deity of death and destruction, and how his face is like a pig, and he retrieves his long-lost red jacket for him, and all is alright with the world. And Parasya, still feeling rather downhearted, tries to cheer herself up with doing the hopak until she encounters Gritsko, and they are pretty much happily married, even though Kivria is pretty much ranting and raving against all this, with the help of the gypsy's restraint. So all ends well with Sorochintsy Fair as Gritsko and Parasya are happily married. Now that the plot is out of the way, let's get on to what I thought about the production. I really love how it opened. It starts off very pastorally, with the chorus singing this really lovely song, and I could safely presume that they are standing near a lake with candles, and it's just really lovely. In terms of the fair itself, it's kind of darkly lit, though I will have to say that throughout the opera, I really love how each moment is lit, because it was able to show the weird elements just really coming into play with this particular story, and it was just done quite well. Sure, I would have loved to have a lot more sceneries from time to time, but when all is said and done, I kind of enjoyed it from time to time, and I especially love the dream sequence, which was quite weird in its execution, as everyone has all of these pig heads, and especially considering the fact that one of Mussorgsky's other great works, Night on Bald Mountain, was being used. And for those of you who watched Fantasia ever since you were a kid, you will automatically recognize that piece of music as Chernobog's epic theme. And it's done really well, heightening the weirdness of the dream sequence, and at the same time just really giving a sense of surrealism. So the fact that there was some surreal elements being used in this opera was really well done, and the costumes looked really, really nice to look at. It's a combination of what you usually see from people wearing all of these traditional Russian costumes with some of the more modern costumes being used. And I especially love the costumes being used for the dream sequence, which really heightened its surreal nature. So overall, the production in its entirety was really, really well done, with the dream sequence being the major highlight, in my opinion. Now we get to the singers, starting off with Jens Larsen as Solopi Cerevic. What I noticed about this role is that you really need a basso profondo or a cantante who can be able to sing all of these low notes, but at the same time hit certain high notes. This is pretty much in the vein of the likes of Veit Pogner, Dalland, Fasolt, Fafner, Gurnemans, Titoral, Philip II, the Grand Inquisitor, Ramphis, the King, and a lot of other great basso parts. And I thought that Jens Larsen did a very magnificent job of how he was able to embody this particular father figure. I really love his comic timing, as irreverent as it is, and I just love his voice, which is round, rich, and cavernous, and he has a very tall and alluring presence, which makes him very ideal for all of these fatherly figures. And he just has a ball with this particular role. I had such a ball just watching him just embody this particular character with great comic timing, and of course, his luxurious basso profondo voice. Singing the role of his wife, Kivria, was the superb Polish dramatic mezzo-soprano Agnes Zwierko. And this role really does call for a dramatic mezzo-soprano, or even that of a mezzo-contralto, who can hit all of the low notes very, very well and hit some of the high notes too. Mezzos who have sung the likes of Azucena, Amneris, Dalila, Fricka, Brangena, and even to some extent Kundry, Maddalena from Rigoletto, and all of these great dramatic mezzo parts have pretty much sung the role of Kivria. And I thought that Agnes Zwierko, what more can you say about her? She was excellent. I have seen her in a lot of productions at the Komische Oper Berlin, and she does not disappoint whatsoever. In fact, she succeeds magnificently. Her physical comedy with Jens Larsen's Cerevic was so well done. The way she was able to give him such a beating was really, really hilarious. And I thought that she stood out really tall in this particular production, and she was the absolute star of the evening. She stole the show, especially when she was cooking all the pastries and the cakes and just feeding it to Ivan Turshit's Afanasy, which was done with such a rollickingly comedic effect, even though at times it can be quite forced. But you really have to give it up to Agnes Zwierko's superb acting chops for really making the best out of this really, really ungrateful character. But I can definitely tell that someone as grand and wonderful as Madame Zwierko was able to have a lot of fun embodying the role of the nagging wife, Kivria. Singing the role of their daughter, Parasia, was the superb light lyric soprano, Mirka Wagner. Sopranos who have sung Parasia have also been very well known for singing a lot of the light lyric and coloratura soprano parts, most notably the likes of Zerbinetta, Gilda from Rigoletto, and even to some extent Pamina from the Zauberflöte. And even though Parasia isn't as widely performed as, let's say, Zerbinetta, Gilda, Pamina, or even that of Zdenka from Arabella, this still calls for a light lyric soprano who can hit all of her notes really, really well and look really wonderful on stage. And I thought that Mirka Wagner's superb sounding light lyric soprano voice really made the best out of this darling of a character. First of all, I really love just how she was able to embody this role with girlish charm and lovability, and her solo number, which is the Hopak, was just so gorgeously sung. I could sense the exuberance and the energy that she exudes with this particular role, and she just seems to have such a ball with portraying Parasia. Singing the role of her lover, Gritsko, was Alexander Oliver, and he really does call for a lyric tenor who sings in roles like Tamino, Pedrillo, Belmonte, and a lot of these other young heroes. And I thought that Alexander Oliver did a very great job with singing Gritsko, and he just looked very youthful on stage, combined with the fact that he has a lovely color in his lyric tenor voice. I love how rich it sounds like. I love how it's able to sound youthful and charming, and I also love the fact that he's very charming to look at on stage. He's a very wonderful singing actor with a superb voice and a very wonderful and handsome countenance on stage. And his chemistry with Mirka Wagner's Parasia was extremely palpable. You could feel the exuberance and the vivacity these two have as the lovers, and they just did their roles really, really well. Then we have Ivan Tursic's Afanasy, and this role does call for a character tenor who specializes in roles like Mime, the captain from Wozzeck, and a lot of superb character tenor parts. And I thought that Ivan Tursic did a very great job with embodying this particular role, complete with the neurosis and the religious fanaticism this character has. He was able to just do a very great job, both vocally and dramatically, though in this case, quite comically as well. And I thought that his chemistry with Agnes Svierko's Kivria was very, very well done, considering the physical comedy they had to do with each other, especially when Svierko's Kivria feeds him all of that food and stuffs his face with all of that whipped cream. I thought it was just kind of weird, but in a hilarious way. Then we go to Tom Erik Lee, who sung the role of Kum, one of Cherevik's drinking buddies. And what you need for this particular role, even though it's a character part, is a firm and steady dramatic baritone. And Tom Erik Lee was just that. He was able to sing his role with great comic timing, and he was just an absolute riot on stage, and his chemistry with Jens Larsen's Cherevik was just full of hilarity, fun, and you could definitely sense that these two had a great time just really bouncing off of each other. Then we go to The Gypsy, sung by Hans Gröning, and this is also another character part, but you also need a lyric or even a dramatic baritone to sing this particular part. Much like the roles of Amfortas or Wolfram from Tannhäuser, or even that of the Herald from Lohengrin, and to some extent Sixtus Beckmesser from Meistersinger and Donna from Rheingold, you really do need a dramatic baritone who can be able to sing lyrically. And I thought that Hans Gröning did a very fabulous job, really bring out that venomous bite to the gypsy, but at the same time, that seductive quality that makes him come alive as a character. And I also love his voice, which is quite youthful, but at the same time, full of exuberance, charm, and a little bit of masculinity to make him stand out really, really well. And then we have Karsten Zabrowski singing the role of the chief devil Chernobog. And much like his counterpart Mephistopheles from Faust, Berlioz' L'Illumination de Faust, and of course Boitos Mephistophele, you really do need a great basso cantante who can strike terror into the eyes of the audience. And I thought that Karsten Zabrowski's brand of vocal terror, combined with the fact that he does look rather cute in that pig's head, was quite well done. He has a very fine basso cantante voice, and he was able to sing his part very, very well, while at the same time embodying his part with a little bit of menace and at the same time making him quite hilarious to look at on stage. So overall, the singers were in their A game in the premiere of Mussorgsky Sorochintsy Fair at the Komische Oper Berlin, and I thought that the conducting done by Henrik Nanasi was very, very well done, as he really paid close attention to the text and he really knew where to find certain moments of tranquility and charm, but at the same time find some moments of erratic musical noise, which he was able to pull off very, very well. And the chorus and orchestra of the Komische Oper Berlin were absolutely wonderful all throughout. So overall, this was definitely a great premiere from what is otherwise a pretty obscure opera composed by the great Modest Mussorgsky. The singers were wonderful, the production was quite interesting, and of course, the conducting done by Maestro Henrik Nanasi pretty much brought everyone together, especially considering the fact that you also have a fine director like Barry Kosky. And for those of you who saw this particular production, what did you think of it? Was there a moment in the production that stood out to you so much? Was there a singer who stood out to you as greatly as much as the other singers would? Or did you feel like there was an element of this particular opera that kind of didn't hold up so well? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in on Thursday for my review of Stephen Barkey's concert. So until then, have a great day, everybody.